Welcome back to live racing right here on Cade Sport, the virtual cycling platform that invites you to stop pedaling and start cycling. You're back with me, Mark, today as I cover for Beth. And you find me here in the proverbial virtual commentary booth, a digital purgatory of sorts. So let's take a look at what we're going to be racing today. So race one, we're going to be starting off to going to the Sun Road Smash. This one has 43 meters of climbing per lap, 5 meters per, for a total of 15 kilometers for the entire course. Race two is going to see us go to Lakeview Circuit, one where we're going to get many bends in I believe that's a 2-lap course. And that is going to see us take on 3.6 kilometers total. Race 3 is where we're going to be getting into our power race, one where the technical aspects go out the window, and we're going to be looking at seeing who are the sprinters and who are indeed our endurance riders, for a total of 8.5 kilometers, 2 laps to make that total 8.5. So what are we going to have for our power-ups today? Well, for race one, we're going to have 2 for 2 each. So there's going to be 4 chances at power-ups in 2 categories. So there is Corner Caper, which has 10 seconds. That's going to, of course, allow riders to navigate the corners with ease without that crash mechanic coming into play. 10 second only, as I just said, with a 1-minute recharge time. Then we have 2 of the Great Responsibility. So as they say in the Marvel Comics universe, with great power comes great responsibility, because that will give riders 2,500 watts. Yes, you heard me correctly, 2,500 watts for just 5 seconds. And that has a 1-minute recharge time as well. So riders are going to want to play these carefully. Race 2 is going to see us use 2 per of Razor's Edge. So just 1 power up in race 2. And that makes riders nice and thin, as though they can just slice through the air, getting rid of that air resistance. So it's like having that draft benefit, but you can get that charge ahead of other riders. So in other words, not using the draft benefit. So that's 10-second usage time, again with that 1-minute recharge time. Race 3, again, because we're looking at seeing who are the endurance riders, who are the sprinters, who's going to make those big attacks and breakaways. We're not relying on power-ups. This is going to be everything in the quads, the glutes, and the calves of our racers today. So let's take a look at our riders as they warm up. We're just about to hit that time on the start line. Seeing a lot of familiar names today. And off we go. So lots of straights here, but lots of tight corners as well. So there's going to be chances for riders, such as what we can see with David Tobin here, to make a nice big powered attack on the straights. But they're going to want to play them, nice and carefully, and as those serendipitous. To highlight that, we just saw Martin sweep out in that corner there. Timothy again, right up at the front, leading the charge. Pedro showing some power. Verbika in the mix as well, and Carl. So we're seeing a lot of familiar contenders for the top spots. But who is going to claim it? Let's watch and find out, of course, as we keep going. David Tobin, interestingly, taking a different lane selection from everyone else. Looking to, perhaps, like he's done here, find the perfect place in the peloton. Looking to get some of that draft benefit from Timothy, who's chosen a different lane selection, maybe to partially deny some of that draft benefit. Well, he opens up a bit of a lead, and Homer just sails from behind like some great clipper on the 7 seas. Oh, Timothy and Homer. So here's where Pedro comes into play with that power that we often see him put down. A very good endurance rider, capable of holding power for endured times. And Carl as well. So this makes a very interesting dynamic. Not often have we seen Pedro and Carl duking it out. And Frank here on a tri-bike, going for that aero benefit. And Frank is getting very skilled at taking the tri-bike through those corners. tri-bikes often having lesser grip, often being on those 25mm tires, and often having no tread as well. So that certainly makes cornering a little bit more interesting, but like I say, Frank is becoming a pro at that. Timothy certainly recovered from that crash, so we are on easy difficulty today. And again, for the fairness of the rides, the equal footing of the rides for all caders, it is the easy mode, which is 1.5 second crash time penalty. So Carl here is pacing himself. We often see those big, powerful attacks come up from Carl. So let's see where he's going to play them and what his tactics are going to be for this going into it. And then we've got all three. So we've got Pedro, we've got Timothy, and Carl. And you can see the effort going into everyone. Pedro very artfully there. I could see even from his webcam that he was freewheeling that corner just to dissipate that momentum that was built up. Loving the green screen, by the way, Pedro, with the psychedelic background. So Frank here is putting in a nice big power. Whoa, look at that, almost 1,000 watts. So again, this is equalized. We are in pro power mode, but anything over 421, which is the standard equalization for threshold, that is going to be above threshold. The numbers will still be equalized, but certainly a very powerful. Oh, Frank. So Timothy here, Pedro, and oh, nice save there, Timothy. You can see that momentum build up, and there's a little bit of drift out, but he just managed to break that in the right second. So for those of you new to us, braking and steering are controllable in game. We do have the companion app, otherwise known colloquially in CadeSport as the Co app. When you download the game, you get the QR code appear on the root menu, the home menu, and you scan that with the camera on your phone, and you can access the Co app. Attach it to your handlebars with a phone mount, and you can steer with a gyroscope, the gyroscope of your phone. You also have the brake button on your phone screen. The longer you hold that, the more of a percentile you brake by. Thereby you brake as you would out in the real world for riding or racing, with a dampening of the brakes rather than a sharp brake. Oh, here we go, big powerful attacks here. Over 1,000 we just saw there for Timothy, similar for Pedro. Timothy putting in a lot of effort there. Rocking back and forth as he's putting in the effort, presumably in the drops, but obviously rocking as well with whatever he's listening to on his headphones there. So Pedro is making the choice to be on the tri-bike as well, getting that aero benefit for attacks. And let's see how that works out when we get to final sprints towards the end of the race here. So everyone's kind of learned their lessons from those hard corners they've taken. I believe all three riders that we've got at the front here have wiped out, and they're now playing it a lot more cautiously as they go in. So we have the power-ups as well. Let's see when those are used and deployed. We also have the Great Responsibility, which can be used on the straights for aero, but we do have 43 meters of climbing, which is mostly isolated to one section on this map. It can also be used for that, for doing some insane Geraint Thomas style climb. Well, I think 2,500 is even a number that would make even Geraint Thomas perhaps water at the eyes, if you will. And David Tobin's caught up as well. Utilizing a bit of draft benefit here, but that peloton seems to be swaying across the road, perhaps trying to deny each other a bit of draft benefit. And Frank Garcia recovered nicely as well, putting in a good effort over threshold here. So Pro Power Mode, which is powering this race, is a fantastic system. People who are very clever at math, very clever at coding, and very clever at sports sciences, have a lot more clever than me by far, have, which is not saying much, have utilized this and have founded this and put all of their knowledge into this. The idea is that you join Cade Sport, you race and ride on whatever system you're using, a direct drive smart trainer, a entry-level fluid or mag turbo trainer, rollers, or one of the, David, one of those Wi-Fi enabled static bikes as well can be used. And once you've put in a good amount of effort, a good amount of time on the bike, the servers behind Cade Sport will crunch the numbers and find out what your threshold effort is. And that effort is then standardized to 421 watts, meaning that people can ride together beneath threshold and at threshold. So people who want to win this, who are perhaps top athletes out in the real world, top contenders, they're going to have to really go above their threshold to really show themselves in sprints and attacks. This means that people who have been separated by race categories and ride categories in other virtual cycling platforms can ride together and socialize together. So we've got somebody here we've got Martin, using the Great Responsibility, which has really powered him up, but there is a corner coming up. Oh. But luckily with the easy mode difficulty, Martin can recover from this and put in another big push. It does mean though that he is going to have to put in that push and be out of the saddle now, maybe in the drops, really crunching the cranks and really cranking a diamond, as would be said among UK roadies, UK cyclists. In other words, where you're not quite doing those smooth circles because you are putting in a lot of effort. Verbika here putting in a big push to catch up with the peloton. So now we have a fully formed chase peloton. Let's see what they can achieve. And Homer's here as well. I'm wondering if Homer is going to make a deal with the devil, if he's going to work with enemy teams, rival teams, and take the lead to act as a sweep. What's known as a sweep, which is somebody who comes back to give the draft benefit to a chase team to bring them forward. Oh, lots of crashes here. This is perhaps the most arduous of corners on this map. And it seemed to catch everybody out there. BJ Alfonso here, who's put in some solid efforts before. So let's see what he can achieve today. So lots of, that's the trouble with powering into a corner. You can panic when you see other people beginning to sprint. And like I've said before, you forget. You go blind to what's coming up. So Timothy here has fallen behind the lead group. Frank is in second place. Timothy catching up, which I'm sure he's not going to struggle to do. Oh, another catch by both David and Timothy. Oh. So that lead peloton is starting to break up. So people are starting to get a little bit panicked and put in those big efforts to catch Carl here, who is flying around these corners. And David now taking that second spot. Look at those power numbers. Absolutely fantastic effort. It looks so easy looking at the avatars, but I bet you he's cooking in his pain cave at home. Look at that artful stuff with good power going through that corner. Taking the inside edge of that corner. There we go. Oh, and Carl is using the great responsibility, knowing that he could sense that long shadow of David Tobin's front wheel creeping up on him, creeping along that tarmac. And look at this. This is a chase, a sprint, an attack for the ages. Given a solid 600 to 700 watt range here. David from the West London Cycling Club, which also rides and races here quite often on Cade Sport. You should check out their races as well. A very fun and inclusive group, and David does a lot of commentary for those West London races as well. You should give those a watch. They are fantastic. All right, so we're beginning to see a lead peloton beginning to reform here. Carl's been going hard for a long time, beginning to drop back beneath that 500. So let's see what happens here. We've seen some artful uses of ducking back in behind other riders in the lead peloton in the past couple of races to catch some of that draft benefit, to ease up some of that air resistance. So let's see what Carl is going to do and what he's going to bring to the table here. In fact, all three riders starting to slow off a bit. Corner caper, and I believe I'm also seeing the animation for the great responsibility as well. That's a very artful use of both, knowing that the great responsibility is shorter, so you're not going to run the risk of overpowering into a corner. So firmly securing that second place position as we come to the finish line for lap 2 out of 3. And then as I say that, Timothy is like, nah. I presume with a name like Timothy Thomas, that Timothy is from the French part of Belgium. So he was like, no, no. All right, so we're seeing a lot of this chopping and changing as we're going into this final lap, and a lot of drifting and saving at the last minute in these corners. Everyone's panicking as they're duking for that top spot. Is this going to be the one where David causes an upset to Carl and Timothy? Only time will tell. Everyone's playing it fairly cautiously as well, though, on the straights. They're not going for the big power, knowing that some of those corners are coming up, I presume, and also knowing that they want to save something for that final attack. So Pedro there beginning to catch up with Timothy. Vanessa a little way behind. You can see the little dot of the avatar in the distance of Pedro. And you can see the dot of Vanessa's avatar slightly larger on the horizon for Martin as he's successfully catching up. So we've seen a chase peloton begin to reform again after those big crashes. So let's see what can happen. Oh, taking it nice and cautiously around those corners, knowing that they still have a chance for an attack to jockey for those positions, perhaps even podium. Both Frank and Homer on tri-bikes, often referred to as time trial bikes in-game, because I guess triathlon is entirely time trial for all three of those sports in the events that they are adjudicated. Oh, Timothy. Oh, and David. So with 3 kilometers, just over 3 kilometers to go, has Carl stolen this, or are the 2 contenders behind going to have a chance to catch up? We just saw Carl use a great responsibility as well. And that may have given him a bit of an edge. But let's see what happens here. My apologies, that wasn't a great responsibility. That was a corner keeper. So this has also given Pedro a unique opportunity to catch up as well for perhaps a podium position. But let's see what happens here. So we just saw the two riders in front kind of hook that corner going round. So let's see what Pedro can achieve here. Very artful, dropping off of his power through the cranks as he comes around that corner. Oh, both playing it very cautiously around that corner because they have... Oh! Just saw Pedro wipe out there on his chase attack. But yeah, both David and Timothy... Oh, nasty crash there with Timothy. But we're seeing both riders play it cautiously, knowing that they have the same opponent now. Oh... It's nerve-wracking enough that I'm just like pulling on my arm hairs as I'm watching this unfold. Like, can they clinch it? Can they usurp the soaring Swede Carl Axel? Here we go, just above threshold there. Holding a good power as he's coming around this one of the final corners of the race. So we've got just under a K&a-half left. Now we're seeing those big power numbers being crunched by the two chasers. David still very comfortably holding his own. It might even be wise at this point of a 22-second lead if... oh, wow. And he's keeping his cadence going as well as doing that. So now both riders are probably going to be thinking that with that lead that Carl has, that it's probably best now to jockey for podium places. Timothy clinching that second place position. Just over half a kilometre left for Carl. Kind of easing up on those crank arms. With that very comfortable lead that Carl has. And nobody would blame him for trying to catch his breath and slow that heart rate right now. And there we can see him doing just that. Yeah, I know what that feels like when you've gone beyond your VO2 and you're in the old pain box, if you will. You've drunk from the well of pain. So the final straight here. Are we going to see a big powered sprint, or is he just going to carefully just roll over the finish line? There we go. Timothy rolling in second. Very good effort from Timothy. If it wasn't for those crashes, I dare say that we would have seen a real fight for that first place position between Carl and Timothy, and the same with David too. Fantastic effort from David there. And Pedro as well, securing within that top 5. And Vanessa rounding out the top 5. Let's take a look at that leaderboard as the final riders roll over the line here. Yeah, so Timothy closed a very sizable part of that At one time, 22 to 25 second lead that Carl got from those very unfortunate crashes and his expertly timed use of power-ups, shaving it all the way down to 12.5 seconds. David was, look at that, so 6.3 seconds, 6.3 seconds behind Timothy. Pedro coming in fourth, and Vanessa rounding out the top five. And Homer today dropping down to about seventh, but I'm wondering if he's warming up and we're going to see a lot of big power coming from him in the final race here. So this is a 2 times multiplier today. And do we have the scoreboard working today? Yes, we do. So our leader is, of course, at the moment, Carl, but just a shave behind Timothy. Just a shade behind is Timothy. So we are going to see some interesting things come up in the next course, which is a much more technical course where riders are going to want to temper their efforts, temper their attacks, temper their sprints. And this might be the one that separates the wheat from the chaff and the Americans from the possibly Canadians, or whatever they say there in dodgeball. So let's jump on over to our second course as we have our riders beginning to warm up, ready for that start line. So this is one of our mountain bike courses, as we discussed on the last race. We are, what we're going to be seeing on riders who are using direct drive smart trainers is that they are going to get the variable terrain resistance coming on here, which I think is the best available on any virtual cycling platform right here in Cade Sport. So what happens is when they go on those off-road sections, they're going to feel that chain tension just ramp up through their direct drive smart trainers, through the cassettes, through the chain and into their crank arms, increasing the effort they're going to need. And it makes for a very dynamic course and really adds on to the steering dynamic and the crash mechanic too. So Sebastian Kuhn is here, and we're going to... I'm sorry, I thought I was looking at Pedro earlier, because I was talking about Pedro and we had all 3 of the riders there. Actually, Sebastian. Hello, Sebastian. So Sebastian is going to be at home on the mountain bike course. Let's see what we can... let's see what he's going to achieve here. And Renee taking the lead at the moment. We've got Jennifer Garcia here as well, daughter of Frank Garcia, who put in a very solid effort on the road race course, the final course on, when would that have been, Saturday? Absolutely fantastic, and a very solid challenge that she put into Carl, coming in second place. Vibeke taking the lead. Vibeke is good at holding power at around threshold and really showing that power on courses such as mountain bike courses and uphill climbs. So I think we're going to see some good effort here from Vibeke. David here taking the lead. Well, we've got Renee as well taking the lead. Interestingly, on the road bike, again, we spoke about that. That's going to lower the rolling resistance because the rolling resistance here is based upon dynamics that are variable to the outside world, comparable to those variables from the outside world. So that hard, solid grip of mountain bike tires, the wider tire surface, and the lower air pressure, which is designed to grip to the road more, grip to the surface more, I should say, on dirt and terrain to keep you safe, but it also slows you down. And we've got Lisa here from the West London team. Lisa put in some solid efforts as well on some of the previous races we've seen. So let's see what she can bring to the table. Right now it's Carl and Renee duking it out. Mountain bike versus road bike. So it's going to give very good rolling resistance on the on these variable surfaces on a road bike. But with the dirt and the the mud. You might see some slippage, some drifting as you go into the corners. So Sebastian here beginning to climb that table, which I'm absolutely not surprised by. So look at that, we're seeing a lot of efforts here. Sebastian just cool as a cucumber. Even cooler with that psychedelic background. And Martin here, beginning to move up as well, beginning to close the gap ahead of him. Timothy as well. So we've got Carl and Rene still duking it out at the top of the race here. Oh, and then we see that variable dynamic that the road bike tires are going to bring to this in effect, unfortunately. So let's see if Rene can attack this gap, close it, and keep that competition with Carl going. Right now, Carl is just flying. Oh. Perfect textbook lane selection there. So razor's edge from Carl, which again makes it as though your rider is incredibly slim. In other words, just slicing like a knife through that air resistance. And the same with Rene and Sebastian. And Lisa's closing that gap as well. So we're getting something of a peloton on a mountain bike course, which is fantastic to see. Oh, Lisa just wiped out there. A bit of drifting, it seemed like. Rene still very much holding his own against Sebastian. But here's the thing with attacking a straight, he's going to have to play this corner very carefully. Oh. It's fantastic watching these technical courses. So 202, just 100 meters left. And Carl again, getting the chance to just ease up on those crank arms and just sail over that finish line. Rene is certainly moving up that leader table, that leaderboard. And Sebastian easily clinching third. Vanessa fourth. All right, let's take a look at that leaderboard. So 5 seconds ahead, a little bit of a shorter lead, but on a mountain bike course like that and with those technical aspects, still quite a sizable gap that he managed to open up with that very unfortunate crash right at the last minute there from Rene. And then 8 seconds behind Carl, just over 3 seconds behind Rene, we have Sebastian, and certainly we see him come into his own on these mountain bike courses. Vanessa moving up another spot to fourth. Let's take a look at the scoreboard as it stands. So we're still seeing the same two contenders, 1 and 2. We've got David there beginning to put some pressure onto Timothy. So let's see what can happen as we go into race number 3. This is the one where riders are going to want to show everything they have. They're going to want to begin to resuscitate that heart rate a bit, begin to lower it, begin to get those deep breaths in, because they're going to need to get into the old pain box for this one. So Lake Bend, a total of 8.5 kilometers with 64 meters of climbing. On a power course like this, a small climb like that can be deceptive. That's also going to add on to the strain that riders will be under. So let's take a look as they're beginning to warm up for this course. Okay, there as well. Nice gentle effort, just massaging those legs, getting them ready for the effort ahead. A wonderfully calm rhythm, and a rhythm, as you can see from the animation of her avatar, that reflects the real-life cadence numbers that it's receiving. We can see Timothy there fueling up as well on his webcam, getting ready for the calories that I'm sure he's just going to burn like a candle at both ends on this race. Alright, so here we are on that starting line. Let's see what everybody's going to bring to the table today. BJ Alfonso shooting straight off the start line, giving us a good powered start. But let's see what that means to any kind of pelotons that are perhaps inclined to form. Oh, and Jennifer just shooting ahead again. We saw a lot of power from Jennifer. Jennifer is clearly a very powerful rider. We saw a lot of power from her on Saturday. And here we can see she's just above threshold, but also kind of tempering, holding there as an endurance level. Perhaps luring other riders to her rear wheel so that she can begin to cook the competition. Alfonso, second for now, because we're seeing a peloton form right behind here. We saw absolutely expert use of the draft in pelotons on the lead group in the last race, which was on a similar course. I can't remember if it was the same course or not, but similar one to this one on Saturday. Lisa and David working as a team here. They got split up in previous races. Let's see what they're going to bring to the table. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they slingshot each other. In other words, if one's getting tired, one will be taking the lead for the draft benefit, and then vice versa as they go. That's what we've seen teams do expertly in recent times with Team Hive, with Timothy and Vibeke, which, we saw Vibike's wonderful win with that tactic coming into play on, I want to say that was Thursday the week prior. Alfonso here taking the lead. Jennifer right behind. Jennifer tempering her effort today, and clearly having learned from having overcooked herself maybe a little bit early in the previous race, but showing very good ability to hold endurance at threshold, just above threshold, and even at the sweet spot, which I would say is about 15 to 20% beneath threshold. So we've got a small chase pack that's forming. Homer here taking the lead. And as I thought, we're beginning to see Homer come into his own. And he was indeed saving it for this race, the 3 times multiplier. Homer is an endurance rider who rides a lot of hours, a lot of Ks, and a lot of time in that saddle. If anyone knows how to hold power and temper their sprints, it's going to be Homer. All right, so we have Homer here taking the lead. And very just carefully cruising along at the point where he is tempering his attack and calculating, waiting for the opponents, the would-be competitors, to attack. We've got a lead pack forming, and I believe, is that Jennifer who's fallen behind and is beginning to close that gap? Very artfully closing that gap. You can literally see through this wonderful drone shot or helicopter shot that she is achieving just that as we come into this wonderful wide sweeping bend around this very scenic cliffside route. And through the disused or remodeled train tunnel. There we see Homer, he's keeping it together for his attack. Probably going to be easing off in the real world on those cranks as he takes that descent. There we go. Because you just want to massage those legs, just let go of that lactic acid in those quads and in the glutes whenever you get those little tiny chances to. And Carl here is responding. But again, Homer can hold. Carl is also an endurance rider, very good at holding power. But Homer knows when to hold and when to attack from those years and years of experience in the saddle. Right there in Indiana, the home of Major Taylor and the birthplace of perhaps one of my favorite fiction movies, Breaking Away, a wonderful cycling movie that you should all go out and watch. So we saw a big breakaway come in, and now that's kind of closing down again. So we can see where riders perhaps beginning to get into that spot where they're feeling a lot of pain and are beginning to think to themselves, maybe this is where I temper and don't attack. Or maybe it's just that the riders following as the competitors are just choosing to close that gap as well. So Carl here beginning to drop back, get some of that draft benefit while he can. So Timothy there getting the Cade Moji, as Beth has coined the term for them, from Vibika, which is one of another one of the social features that is here on Cade Sport, is you can show respect to your fellow riders and racers with emojis, reactions if you will. And Timothy carrying that torch for Team Hive at the moment. Very evenly spaced, equally gauged group of riders here. BJ Alfonso opening up a can of the old hot sauce, if you will. Just really giving us some big power, presumably in the drops, risen out of the saddle in the real world, and just really pressing through those cranks, opening up a very impressive breakaway. But that's a lot of power that's going into that is quickly dropping back off. That's the only thing with sprints, is let's see what this means for Alfonso as the race progresses, because there are no power-ups here. Everyone would equally have power-ups, so arguably it's, well, not arguably, it is an equal footing for everyone, but there are no power-ups at all. So this is relying on what you can put into a sprint and an attack. If you do overcook yourself, you're going to have to find a way to recover fast. Which, by the way, it looks like a breeze on screen here, but as you can see through some of the pain faces on camera, it's not a breeze. It's more like a Saharan breeze. A 50 Celsius breeze pelting you in the face. with the barbarous wisps of sand. So we're getting to see some really good jockeying here for this attack to chase out BJ Alfonso, who is holding a very stable gap right now. So we have just 1.5 kilometers left. This race has really gone by fast, because as much as it does have those climbs, it has those descents, which are obviously going to bring with them all that momentum that has just shot us along through this course. Beginning to close the gap with that attack group. Up ahead of him is Martin, who's putting in some solid effort, as you can see through the little webcam picture that we had there. A lot of effort, clearly in the drops, and just gunning it. Well done, Martin. Timothy, Homer, and Carl, you can tell that they're kind of tempering their efforts around about threshold, maybe just a little bit under. Again, threshold for everyone, regardless of what it is individually and what their power numbers truly are in the real world, is going to be at 421, being in the pro power mode here. So we're seeing this like waves gently cresting on a beach. They're just gently changing those positions as they go, as they're each trying to keep onto those podium positions. And as I say that, we're beginning to get some of those sprints come in, the attacks, which both have responded to Carl's attack there, Homer and Timothy. Oh, Timothy. So that seems like that was Timothy's front wheel colliding with Carl that caused that crash. But I'm sure Timothy can recover from this, one of the more powerful riders we see in these races. So BJ Alfonso just clinching that, no problem. Carl coming in second. Homer at 1,000 watts. Martin coming in fourth. Fantastic work, Martin. Absolutely fantastic. Riding with a lot of heart today, a lot of passion put into that. Wonderful stuff. David and Lisa as well, who have both put in fantastic efforts too. And Vanessa. Wowee, what a race that was. And then Kay, very great rhythm on that pedaling. Just keeping a good rhythm and keeping her place in 9th place here. We saw a wonderful attack from Jennifer right off the bat there. I'm wondering if she had a technical or a mechanical, having dropped back to 10th here. But don't be disheartened by that, Jennifer. You put in a wonderful effort on Saturday, and I'm sure we've not seen the last of your amazing attacks. So let's take a look at our leaderboard here. A 7-second lead by BJ Alfonso. Is that the first win of BJ Alfonso on this? I'm not certain on that one, so I'm not going to quote that as a fact, but certainly among the first. So that is fantastic effort, almost a 7.5-second lead. And Homer just behind, almost exactly 3 seconds behind Carl for 3rd place. Martin coming in 4th with that fantastic attack to close those gaps, as we saw there in the last kilometers, the last furlongs, if you will, of that race. So let's take a look at the leaderboard and see what that final race has done with its 3 times multiplier. And Carl's still very comfortably at the top, but BJ has taken full advantage of that 3 times multiplier and has pushed right the way up to 2nd. David coming up again, clinching 3rd. So you can see what those multipliers can do. Really, really wonderful stuff. What a fantastic race we've seen today. And Lisa just rounding out the last of those scores right now, coming in with 68. All right, so thank you for joining us, everybody. Please do go and follow the Cade Sport Facebook page for announcements on when these races are coming up. You can also follow them live on the Cade Sport YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful day.